The moment the man stepped onto the stage to receive his award, his wife arrived holding the last will of his first love, demanding accountability. In front of everyone, she accused him of plagiarizing his first love's research, claiming he wasn't an electrical engineer at all, just a despicable, shameless thief. Yet no one present believed her, because the man's talent and competence were obvious to all. To convince the crowd, the woman pulled out the original handwritten blueprints of electric motors, personally designed by her first love before his death, declaring them proof of the man's theft. But when the man saw them, he was utterly confused. These were his own designs. How had they ended up in her hands? Seeing what appeared to be solid evidence, the crowd turned against the man, condemning him for deceiving them for years and daring to show up to accept an award. People began throwing bottles at him. The woman ordered others to hold him down and force him to kneel and kowtow in apology to her first love. By then, the man had no strength left to defend himself. His heart was shattered by his wife's betrayal. 30 years of devotion to the factory and love for her, all thrown away like garbage. The next moment, he spat blood and died on the spot. Perhaps heaven pitied his fate and granted him a second chance. When he woke up, he realized he had returned in time, precisely to the day the factory director's wife had arranged for him to marry her daughter. At first, he was disoriented, but upon seeing the calendar on the wall, he understood. He had been reborn. To his astonishment, he discovered the woman had been reborn too. When pressured by her mother to accept the marriage, the woman immediately refused, declaring she loved her first love, Sun Shuijun, not the man standing before her. The man likewise instantly declined, saying, "Forced fruit never tastes sweet." Still, the factory director and his wife deeply admired the man's abilities and hoped he'd become their son-in-law and eventually manage the entire factory. But in this new life, the man refused to repeat past mistakes. He willingly stepped aside to let the woman marry her first love. He even assured the director's wife that even if he didn't become their son-in-law, he wouldn't leave the factory because he'd never forget the director's kindness. However, as he headed back to his office, he discovered his position as chief engineer had been stolen by the first love. Determined to prevent the tragedy of their past life from repeating, the woman decided to fire him and promote her first love instead, believing this would save him from dying in an accident. Seeing her stubbornness, the man immediately agreed, because he knew without him the factory would surely collapse. After all, they had a multi-million-dollar order coming up. If they failed to deliver on time, they'd owe $30 million in breach penalties. But the woman insisted on firing him anyway, ignoring the pleas of the manager beside her. Seeing this, the man decided not to argue further and began packing his things to leave. He was stopped by the first love, who demanded to inspect his belongings, claiming fear he might steal important research. The man allowed the inspection, but the first love's real goal was to steal his technical notebook. While the man wasn't looking, he slipped it into his pocket and let him go. Just then, several workers ran to the woman, reporting that the factory's motors had malfunctioned again and urgently needed attention. They rushed to the factory, only to find the workers completely incapable of repairing the new motor model. After all, it was invented by the man, and only he knew how to fix it. The woman, however, refused to believe the factory couldn't survive without him. She immediately ordered the first love to handle the repair. Arrogantly, he grabbed a screwdriver and started fiddling with the machine. At that moment, the woman received a call from her father. She proudly announced she'd fired a little thief from the factory, without mentioning that thief was Song Jiming.